तो आज हम है वली रांच इस्लामिक सेंटर डलास में। यहाँ पे डॉक्टर उमर सुलेमान का बयान है, तो लेट्स गो इनसाइड एंड डू आवर ईमान ताज़ा रिफ्रेश। सो ये पार्किंग है। This is Wali Ranch Islamic Center. Let's go in and explore. Walaikum Assalam.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, by the way, side note here, Yemen, because our brother Omer Yemen is not what it used to be. So when we say Yemen, this is one of the closer towns to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? What's considered Yemen at that time is closer to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? To the Arabian Peninsula and the entirety of it. But he's coming with the chief. And you can imagine the joy that I brought him to you, Ya Rasulullah. What do you think happens when he gets back to Medina? He finds out that the Prophet died. Completely heartbroken, crushed. Right? And subhanAllah, this is really deeply profound. The whole story of Uwais al-Qarni, the man from Yemen who stayed behind from the west, from the delegation of his tribe, because he had to take care of his mom. So he missed being a Sahabi, and the Prophet ﷺ said that this man, when he comes, you're going to meet him, and he's telling the Sahaba later on, make dua, or ask him to make dua for you, ask him to seek forgiveness for you, because he's a blessed man. So there are some people, subhanAllah, that are coming from Yemen to the Prophet ﷺ after he sent Mu'adh to them, and they're embracing Islam and coming, and they just missed the Prophet ﷺ. In the case of Jareed, imagine, I mean, that 40 days felt like a lifetime, right? For that time that he had with the Prophet, 40 to 90 days is some of the rhythm. I mentioned the point is that short time he had with the Prophet, even if it's a week with him, felt like a lifetime. Like I was immediately someone dear to the heart of the Prophet. He brought me to his home. He treated me like family right away. He praised my character, he gave me specific nasiha, and now he has passed away. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Jareed was crushed at the death of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as he was coming with the excitement of a chief that had embraced Islam, but that actually ended up only being a tabiri because he missed the life of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he managed still to narrate 100 hadiths, 100 narrations from the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I'm going to mention this one because it's really interesting. But Jareed is one of the core reasons for the Masah controversy, the wiping over the socks. Ibrahim al-Nakhai, he narrates from Hammam, and Jareed, and he saw Jareed relieve himself, ثم توضأ and made wudu, ومسح على خفيه رضي الله تعالى عنه, and he wiped on his socks, and he said, رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يفعله. I saw the Prophet doing this. Now, what type of socks? That's where the fiqh is different, and it's valid ikhtilaf. It is valid ikhtilaf. Alright? How thick does it have to be? I'm not starting that fight right now. It's valid ikhtilaf. It truly is valid ikhtilaf, and may Allah reward all of our ilm and guide us towards always a salah that listens to all things in regards to our deen. Allahumma ameen. But just from a perspective of why this is so important, is that Ibrahim says, فَكَانَ يُعْجِبُهُمْ هَذَا لِأَنَّ جَرِيرًا مِنْ آخِرِ مَنْ أَسْلَمَ. This used to make the Sahaba happy, this made Muslims happy, because Jareed was one of the last people to become Muslim. What does that mean? Anybody tell me in 50 terms? Why is that important? I see some college students here. Come on, make your, show your seminary, man. Show them what's up. What is it? More accurate? Why would it be more accurate? What is it? It wasn't abrogated, not a law. You can still count it. sons of God. Just looking to represent. It wasn't abrogated, it wasn't mansukh. Because obviously some of these rulings were evolving in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the fact that Jarir became Muslim at the end, and he did this at the end, means that this is one of the last actions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, means that this is the deen. So the only real ikhtiyaf is how thick the khuf is and how long you can do masah over and things of that sort. It also explains a little bit about why a controversy would even exist there, because clearly this was a later practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So it makes sense from a fiqh perspective why this would come up later on. Okay. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away in the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Another incident happens. One of the conversations that Jarir had with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before he passed away said, Ya Rasulullah, that my people are very divided. There's a lot of fracture that's happened amongst the subtribes. And he wanted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wanted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to bring them back together. He thought Islam was an opportunity to bring them back together. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had intended to help him with them. So his intention was, get back from Yemen, bring all of them now, let's sit around the Prophet ﷺ, let's get rid of all these disagreements now that we're Muslim, and let's hold on to Alhamdulillah, let's hold on to the rope of Allah. Prophet ﷺ died. So he said, I went to Abu Bakr and I said, I made this request of the Prophet ﷺ to bring my people and to unite them on Islam, but now the Prophet ﷺ has passed away, will you help me? And he said that Abu Bakr turned to me, Abu Bakr and said, haven't you heard about what your people did? He said, what? Your people apostated because they're not paying zakat. And Abu Bakr considered those who didn't pay the zakat to be from the murtadeen, right? Those who deny the obligation of zakat to be from the apostates. So forget about uniting them right now. Right now we have to fight them, right? And this is obviously tragic for Jarir. Jarir still hopes that after they bring them back, they can unite them. But now, subhanAllah, he joins, Abu Bakr sends him to join the battle against the apostates and to fight the people and bring them back to La ilaha illallah. So he joins actually now the army of Khalid as it ends up turning out, subhanAllah, that his people were not of the main fractions of the Hurub al-Ridda, so they made Tawbah once again, they repented once again, and they embraced Islam once again. So what does Jarir want to do now? He says, alright, they made Tawbah, let me bring them back to Medina so that we can fulfill what we said we would fulfill. Let's come back to Medina now, and Abu Bakr can unite these tribes. And he said, so I got back to Medina, and I heard the news, Abu Bakr
Subhanallah.
Abu Bakr passed away too.
Allahu Akbar.
So now Umar was the Khalifa. So he goes to Umar and he said, look, the Prophet told me he would sit my people down. Abu Bakr said he would sit with my people and he would bring them, he'd help me bring them together, bring all these tribes together. He said, now I'm asking the same from you, and my people are eager to, join right now the ranks of the Muslims, the armies of the Muslims, and to participate basically, become full participants in the community. They weren't Muslim for too long. Musaylama took advantage of them in their newness in their Islam. Now they're Muslim once again. So can we do this? And Umar, he basically says to Jarir, he says, listen, Abu Bakr forbade those that apostated and then came back to Islam from serving in the army. Remember, Tulayha couldn't serve, right? That was for the safety of the community. Like, fine, your Tawbah will be accepted, but we can't trust you yet to fight on the side of the Muslims. It's putting the community at risk. They said, I can't do that part, but let's see what we can do. So Jarir he goes back and he convinces people, and he comes back into Medina with 2,000 men, and they're holding their weapons. And Umar said, whoa, hold on. What are you doing here? Like, where did these men come from? How did you get 2,000 of them to suddenly come and show up in Medina, all armed up and with their weapons? So Jarir said that I took 100 of my men, and I assigned them, I said, each one of you are responsible for coming as 20. Let's go and let's do Islam between the people. Let's go reconcile. SubhanAllah, look at his brain, his mind as an Amir, as a leader. He says, let's go get, each one of you needs to go and get your group of people, the people that you know that you can convince. You get 20, so 10 times 20 is 2,000. Okay. No, 100 times 20, sorry. It's 200. Sorry. 2,000. He gets 2,000 now. Okay? I have the counting here, by the way, so put that on. 2,000 now. Alhamdulillah, I started to show you. 2,000 men come back to Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, look, I can't put them in the army just yet because that's Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's rule. Umar radiallahu anhu had not yet overturned that rule. He did at some point, he did, especially as the Persians were extremely aggressive. They're fighting two fronts with the Persians and the Romans. So he basically used them in different ways. Brought them together, used them in different ways. This is where Ibn Asakir, rahimahullah, and others, the Khatib mentioned that Umar radiallahu anhu established the first concept of post offices. SubhanAllah, now, because at that time the communication in the Ummah needs to be a lot more fluid and rapid. So they established post offices where they had trustworthy messengers, and it's easy to delegitimize, to send mixed communication, to send an army the wrong way, because people were becoming Muslim and then fighting on behalf of Islam or against Islam so fast that it's hard to tell who your men are sometimes. There's a lot that's happening. So this was Umar radiallahu anhu's attempt, where he established post offices, right? Where the mail will be sent, or a letter will be sent, and then there are trustworthy messengers that are responsible for going back and forth between the different battalions of the Ummah. Then finally, the Persians became very aggressive, and Muslims needed reinforcements in a very particular area. So Jarir was able to take his people from Al-Madinah to Iraq, and subhanAllah, he took them in less than 2 weeks. And they said that was from the barakah of the Iraq of the Prophet for his horse and his ability to move, right? And then that barakah took the whole army, right? They cut that distance in half the time that it would take another group of people because of the speed and the finesse of Jarir radiallahu ta'ala anhu on his horse, and from the barakah with their tribes as well. Now he and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu have a beautiful relationship. There's so much wisdom that we could glean. I know that subhanAllah Salat al-Isha is near, so I'll try to summarize. But there's so much wisdom. One of them, of his narration of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, is that he one day took off his upper garment so he could make wudu, which is very common, is vidah. And Umar radiallahu anhu told him and said, "Khudh ridah, put your shirt back on." It's very common for the men when they're doing wudu, right, to do so. Why was that? He was like, what was that all about? Umar radiallahu ta'ala did not want that to be a fitna for the women. So social media, gym selfies, don't say mashallah awra, right? You know, think about this. There's a concept of haya in our religion. So some of the scholars say it's about haya. It's not always about halal and haram and awra here. Like, you know what you're doing. Okay, so even if you're covering your awra, it can be a fitna for people. This isn't the way of our deen. We have haya in our religion. Right? We have modesty in our religion. And so that's one
Subhanallah.
The other one is about Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, Nahada Mr. Yusuf, but this man is like Yusuf. Meaning what? Hasad, ayn, envy will come towards him like it came to Yusuf. But you will clean himself, let him cover himself and stuff. So that's one narration. The other one, so don't be a fitna for the people. You can pause your gym selfies and think about the modesty that you have online. The other one, though, subhanAllah, is such a beautiful narration. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was with Jarir radiallahu ta'ala anhu one time in a gathering. فَتَنَفَّسَ رَجُلٌ. In Arabic, it means that a man broke wings, right? Passed gas basically, loudly in the middle of a gathering. Obviously, out of nowhere, and it wasn't intended. But someone broke their wudu. So Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu looked at the gathering. قال عزمت على صاحب هذه لما قال, I'm saying to the one who did this, قم فتوضأ, get up and make wudu. Clearly somebody lost their wudu. Somebody get up and make their wudu. And whoever did it didn't want to get up and make wudu. It's embarrassing. The whole gathering is there. The one guy that clearly, Pass gas, he's going to have to get up and make wudu in front of everyone. So Umar said it 3 times, and he was upset that no one was getting up. And then Jarir said, "There's an alayna jami'an. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, go ahead and tell us all to make wudu." So Umar said, "You know what? For myself and for all of you, عزمت علي وعليكم لما قمنا فتوضأنا ثم صلينا." He said that it's for all of us. Get up, let's all make wudu, and let's all pray.
Subhanallah.
So it's one of the ways of protecting the dignity of a Muslim, right? And Umar said something very beautiful to Jarir. He said, "Yarhamuka Allah, may Allah have mercy on you. Ni'ma sayyidu kunta fil jahiliyyah wa ni'ma sayyidu kunta fil Islam." You were a great leader in the days of ignorance, and you're a great leader in Islam. Like Allah has given you a way of thinking about things and a way of going about leading that's very beautiful. And one narration, "Ni'mat Amir ant." What a good leader you are, what a good Amir you are. So Umar praised his wisdom and his way of thinking to just spare that one man of embarrassment. SubhanAllah, that incident in and of itself, think about it. Someone makes a mistake, or someone's in a situation, the man didn't even do anything haram, right? Is there a way to cover? This is a nusri li Muslim. This is to him also. Jarir's thinking about that man, like, this is my nusri, this is my goodwill to him, to not put him in an awkward situation. Let's all go and let's all make wudu and stuff. And of course, this person, subhanAllah, who had this much goodwill towards the Muslims, you can imagine how much fitna broke his heart when the Muslims started to fight each other, right? And Jarir is a man who, remember, Ali radiallahu anhu said he's like family. It's like Ahlul Bayt. But Jarir wanted no part radiallahu anhu in fighting between Muslims or the factions that were arising. And Jarir radiallahu anhu withdrew himself altogether. He wanted to be nowhere around fitna at all. This is part of his nusr. He could be Muslim. To the point, by the way, and this is narrated from Adi ibn Hatim along with him, that they said, "La naqimu bi baldatin yushtamu fiha Uthman." We're not going to sit even in a city where Uthman is being insulted. If the people start to insult Uthman, we don't even want to be in the same city. And so they withdrew themselves from Medina. They went to Iraq. In Kufa, Ali asked Jarir to participate, and Jarir said to him, "Listen, the Prophet ﷺ told me to go to the people and to fight until they say La ilaha illallah." He said, they said La ilaha illallah. I'm not going to fight the people that say La ilaha illallah. I'm not going to go against anyone that's embraced Islam. My job was to call the people to Islam, not to fight them out of it. So no, I'm not going to participate in any friction or fitna between the Muslims. And because of that, he went to a place called Qirqisiyya, which is an island in the middle of nowhere, so that he could stay away from the fitna. So he could worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he could stay away from the fitna. And of course, this is a manhaj, this is a methodology of some of the companions. They dealt with this in different ways, and this was his way of dealing with it. He said, "I didn't become Muslim for this. I didn't become Muslim to fight other Muslims." Of course, one of the signs of the hour that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to us, that as the day of judgment would come for us, at some point, if it comes to a place where fitna becomes too wide, that if you have to take to the hills and raise sheep in the valley, then do that. Right? That's better for you than to put yourself in that situation. He lived a long time, despite that. His children became narrators of his. So he had Ibrahim and Ayyub, his 2 children, Ibrahim and Ayyub, and he also had Al-Munzir and Ubaydullah, 4 sons who narrated from him and became a part of his legacy in that regard. And when he passed away, he was brought back to the city, and the Sahaba cried extensively over him. Because they remembered all the praise of the Prophet ﷺ for this man, even though he was a Sahabi for just a little over 140 days. But his beauty, his character, distinguished him at a very early period, in his own life in Islam. So he died actually in the year 51 after Hijrah. We ask Allah to be pleased with him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with all the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah to send his peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Gather us with him and the companions for those of Adam. Allahumma ameen. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa atubu ilayk.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Subhanallah.
Allah
الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله
أشهد الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله
أشهد الله
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله
صلى الله عليه وسلم
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله
صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله
حي على الصلاة
حي على الصلاة.
حي على
أهلا
الصلاة
وسهلا. السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم.
حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح